Welcome to another episode of the Silver BlackCast. It's your brother Marquise here with your boy Rocco, two diehard Raider fans here to bring you a little bit of insight and some chaos straight from the black hole. Every episode, we're going to break down into 4 downs just like a football field. On first down, we're going to talk about the news, what's hot, what's happening in Raider Nation. On second down today, we're going to break down the offensive line. Is it a concern? Is it a strength? What part of this team is it? On third down, Rocco's going to break down Pete Carroll and talk about what competition really means. And on fourth down, where we never punt on your questions, you bring the heat and we'll bring the answers. So smash that like and subscribe button because it's another episode of the Silver BlackCast where your commitment to excellence meets our commitment to entertainment. Let's get it.
Let's do it.
All right, Rocco. So let's get this thing started. First down, let's talk about some of these news and notes that we got going on here. And obviously, it's been a couple days since we've last posted. And some of the things that's happened recently is Jacorian Bennett trade. How do you feel about that? Any thoughts on that? Was it a surprise? Was it a shock? What do you think?
I don't think it was much of a surprise considering where it looked like he was ending up on the depth chart. I think he's a good player. I think he might actually do very well with Philly, and I hope he does. I just, don't think he's a fit for Pete Carroll and what Pete Carroll likes at that position. We all know the height, the length, and what Pete Carroll's looking for. Pete Carroll knows what he likes. Defensive back play is his specialty, so he's more sure of what he likes there than anywhere else, and I just don't think he was ever a fit. And if he wasn't a fit and he was going to be buried on the depth chart, I like the move. Thomas Booker's a talented defensive lineman, and to me, you can never have enough depth at defensive line. So I think it makes a lot of sense in the end.
Yeah, I think you said it right. He's a guy who is super talented. I don't think anybody's questioning that. If you were to ask the league at this point in the stage, people will say that Philadelphia got the better player. However, that doesn't mean that it's the best player for the Raiders. Jacorian Bennett probably, it can be based on how he played last year, can be a number 2 and maybe even a number 1 cornerback in this league in the right situation, but it wasn't going to be here in Vegas. And Pete Carroll has a specific, not only length and size that he's looking for, but also just a skill set that Jacorian Bennett doesn't have, or in their mind does not have. So he was just constantly falling down the depth chart. You'd like to see him. He started in the second as a second on the depth chart, and you wanted to see him rise up the first team, but really he was just dropping down the third team. And at this point, the Raiders might have been lucky just to get something for him, because I'm sure other teams pay attention and saw the writing on the wall that he wasn't going to play here. So they're lucky they could get somebody for him. And not only did they get a player that may have some untapped talent, but also got a player at a position that they significantly need after the release of Christian Wilkins. So I think it goes on. It's lost sometimes that the Raiders have 2 guys in Philadelphia in their front office that were decision makers for them. And they know Thomas Booker, and they understand that he was buried on that depth chart, and they think that he's a guy who has some potential to play. They may want to give him an opportunity and think that, hey, maybe this guy's a star in the making.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And to me, depth at cornerback as opposed to defensive line, it's just 2 completely different things. Depth is important. Depth is important all throughout the roster at every position. But your depth at corner, if Bennett was going to be maybe our 4th corner or whatever the case may be, that's really depth for the sake of injury, right? But depth on the defensive line is different. These guys are going to rotate in. Not to say Thomas Booker will start, but if he comes along and he's a good rotational piece, that's a different kind of depth because he will play. So I think that's an important point as well.
Yeah, and I mean, watching him in the first preseason game, which we'll talk about, he definitely shows that he's got the stuff. He was given a good push. He's an athletic guy, maybe a little bit of smaller guys in stature, but he plays big. And according to Graphic Radar, and Lane Johnson thinks that he's can be a future Pro Bowler. We'll see how that plays out, but that defensive tackle room definitely can use a little bit of a bump, especially since if you look at the depth chart that recently came out, they had a fourth-round rookie Tonka Hemingway at more of an edge as opposed to defensive tackle, where we knew he was a tweener, but to put him at edge kind of really thins that defensive tackle room even more.
Yeah, you could just, I mean, like I said, you can never have enough guys there. I think he's a really nice depth piece with upside. I think it makes a lot of sense, all things considered.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, let's move on to some of these recent transactions the Raiders have made. We knew that Pete Carroll was going to talk about going to make a lot of moves. We saw that in Seattle. We saw him make over almost 300 transactions that first year. So we knew this roster was going to be fluid. And some of the more recent moves that they've had was the signing of Tremaine Edmonds, the former first-round safety, mainly known for his work that he did in Pittsburgh, and also the signing of Marquise Callaway, who not only is he a wide receiver known from being with the Saints for a few years, but he was also on the Tampa Bay practice squad last year, where John Spytek probably really got to know him, and there's another connection there for coming to Vegas.
Yeah. Edmonds moves a nice move. Talented player, like you said, high draft pick. Had some nice years in Pittsburgh. Makes all the sense in the world with the Lonnie Johnson injury. In the meantime, have him compete. It sounds like we want to use a lot of 3 safety alignments. Move Jeremy Chin into more of a nickel role at times, and then you need to bring another safety onto the field, and it looks like Edmonds will compete with Chris Smith for that role. And as far as Callaway, he had a good year or two in New Orleans, and like you said, Spytek has familiarity with them, and obviously he likes them enough to bring them in, and like we always say, compete.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to reiterate, I might have said Tremaine Edmonds, who was his brother, who was a linebacker, and I wanted him desperately in that draft, if you remember back when we got Colton Miller. But Terrell Edmonds, I'm sorry, is the safety that we recently signed. But like you said, he's a guy who was drafted by a defensive team in Pittsburgh, was started for them for pretty much all 5 years. I mean, he played over 100 games with them and started almost all of them. I think he missed 2 starts in his career in Pittsburgh, and he's been productive. The guy gets a lot of tackles, makes some hits. He's had 5 or 6, 7 interceptions in his career, a couple forced fumbles. So he's a guy who's had some experience in a room that is very, very thin when it comes to experience. You're talking about a room where you have Trey Taylor, who hasn't barely played it down defensively. Chris Smith, same. And then you have obviously Jeremy Chin, who they want to use around as a chess piece. And you have Isaiah Palomalo, who we think has a lot of upside, and no one roots him on harder than Rocco back there. He's the biggest Isaiah Palomalo fan you'll ever meet. But the guy has limited started experience. He had a good second half of the year, but let's call a spade a spade. He's very young when it comes to NFL experience there. So they can use a guy that has a little bit of skins on the wall, because the rest of the room is very, very thin when it comes to experience.
Yeah, Thomas Harper's in that room as well too. Thomas Harper, I think they see him more in the Jeremy Chin role as a more of the strong safety. Could also, play in the box, but also could play some nickel. So he's maybe more of a backup to Chin. And now you bring in Edmonds as that third safety to come in to play on the back end with Palomalo. And that'll be a good competition between the two. And who knows, maybe Trey Taylor gets involved in that competition as well. I really liked him coming out of college.
And let's talk about the other transaction that they made. There was Marquez Callaway. Do you think this guy's got a chance to push for a roster spot?
Sure, he's got a chance. I would probably say unlikely, but I think he might have a good chance to make the practice squad. And the practice squad is more important than ever with the new rules that they changed a couple years ago. And if you're on the practice squad, you're part of the team, and chances are you're going to play at some point. We're going to need you, and you're going to play in the regular season. So anything's possible. I would think the practice squad's more likely.
Yeah, I mean, he's a talented guy. And, second year, he had about 700 yards and 6 touchdowns for the Saints. And then injuries kind of derailed the rest of his career. Hasn't really been able to bounce back and be a factor for anybody. But, he has some experience, which is another room. Our wide receiver room is another room that does not have a lot of experience. Jacoby Myers obviously has played for a while. But your second tenured guy is Trey Tucker, who played, limited snaps as a rookie and a second-year guy. So, we could use a little bit more experience there as well. So if he does make the team, terrific. If he's a practice squad guy, I think just his experience and being around the league will help these younger guys develop as well. So I think a couple good moves by the Raiders, and I'm looking forward to seeing what next Pete has up his sleeve in Spy Tech, because there's some more moves coming for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about this preseason. There's a lot of fans that are up in arms about the performance up in Seattle. Why don't you? I know you have a specific thought on when it comes to preseason games. Why don't you share that with our crowd here?
Do I have to? It's just it's the preseason. We've been down this road so many times. I can't believe that in this day and age, fans, maybe even media members, will still overreact to a preseason game. It literally, at this point, it just blows my mind. These are practice games. These teams are not game planning. Not only are they not game planning, they're literally trying not to show you things, maybe even show you things that they don't intend to use. At least not very often. I think it's important as far as a practice tool for individual players. I think it's quite important for guys that are locked into a positional battle, for guys, especially the young guys fighting to make the roster. Of course, it's important on an individual basis, and you could have takeaways about how certain people look. But to make any kind of judgments about certain aspects of your team or even your team overall, to me, is absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overreaction is the absurdity. There's a lot of things you could take from little things. Obviously, you want to see your team players play well. We want to see people show what you've been hearing about all week in camp. But to relegate how good a player is or how bad a player is or how good a team is or how bad a team is based on a preseason game, that's the absurdity. I've seen people who talk about thinking before the preseason game the Raiders are going to win 10, 11 games, and now they're like, oh, they'll win 4 games after a preseason game. And that's crazy. That's crazy. Raider Nation, if you're one of those fans out there, I'm sorry. That's nuts. As vanilla as these teams are, as little as they want to show.
It would be just as crazy the other way.
Yes.
Yes. It's got nothing to do with they struggled in certain areas. It would be just as crazy if you took the other approach.
Absolutely.
It's absurd.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, from our tone, if you haven't seen it already, I'm sure you've already know Raider Nation that it wasn't the greatest performance, especially in the first half. But Resties, the starters only played a few snaps. But unfortunately, those snaps weren't as productive as we would like to see. But that being said, who did stand out for you? Who were the studs for you in what you saw, Rocco?
I mean, everybody's saying it, but they're saying it because it's true. Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams looked really good.
Jamal in?
I mean, yeah. He made an impact as soon as he was in the game. What I like about Adams, and he looked like his old self. To me, part of playing good defense is just almost an attitude. a swagger, and he brings that. He really
and a joy.
Yeah, you really feel his juice when he's on the field. He has a swagger, he has an intensity, and it jumps off the screen immediately when he's in the game. So yeah, he's the first guy I got to mention.
Yeah, and he just had a joy when he was on the field, and maybe that's from him being out for a couple years, and he's just happy to be on the field and have an opportunity. But you could feel his passion, you could feel his juice, even on the sidelines, watching him cheer all these other guys on and having so much energy. It's easy to see why he would be a Pete Carroll favorite. And I just hope for him that he's able to stay healthy, because I don't want to. I'm knocking on wood right now, Raider Nation. I have a feel from him like a Gerald McCoy when we signed Gerald McCoy, and Gerald McCoy was in his later years, but he spoke so well, and you're like, man, this guy's a leader. This guy's going to have a hell of a season. And unfortunately, he had a career ender in the preseason. We never got to see that come to fruition. But I love Jamal Adams, man, and I think if he could stay healthy, he's going to recreate himself, and he's going to remind the NFL why he was an All-Pro 3 out of his first 4 years in the league. And the guy's still young. He's still 29 years old. He's not like this guy's 42. The guy's got a lot of football left in him if his body will allow it.
Give Pete Carroll all the credit in the world. This is a great idea. This is the best way to use him. To bring him back, back into the league, to make his big comeback, to find himself and become the player he was once again. I think this is the perfect role for him.
Yeah, I agree. One person I thought that played really well that no one's really talking about is I thought Tyree Wilson was making an impact. I thought that I'd lie to you if I told you how many snaps I counted for him playing defensive tackle versus defensive edge. But at the end of the day, I thought he was making plays in the backfield. I thought he was using his length. I thought he was around the ball, and that's all you want as a defensive lineman. You want him to let me feel that you're out there, and I felt Tyree.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he flashed a couple times. I completely agree. Who else? Kai Blue Kelly. He played well, in the second half. I believe he had a couple pass breakups, and sure enough, today he's getting first team reps and had an interception in practice today. So he's making a move. Who else? Obviously Dylan Lave, later in the game, but he did really well. Obviously Bo Jackson's nephew had a big second half.
Yeah.
Those are a few guys.
And Cam Miller,
Yeah, absolutely.
I know a lot of Raider Nations are ready to crown him the backup quarterback today. I would tell you pump the brakes on that, Raider Nation. But it's what you'd like to see: a young guy who's getting an opportunity to play well in his first action. And the biggest thing I could say for him is that the moment did not seem too big for a guy coming from an FCS school. He looked like he fit in. He looked like he was in control. And let's be real, Raider Nation. The purpose of preseason is practice, and the big emphasis is not to get anybody hurt, and to be able to work on getting in and out of the huddles, getting the plays in. It's a preseason for everyone, not just the players, but for the coaching staffs, the communication they have with the players, the communications the coaches have between each other from the coaches in the booth. It is a dress rehearsal. So whether the Raiders played great or they played terrible, they still improved because they were able to go through these fundamental parts of the game that you and I don't get to witness.
Well said. And he does deserve a lot of credit. He played really well, was very poised. He definitely deserves a shout out. I don't know. Anyone else you could think of? I know a lot of it was ugly, in all honesty. Alec Bachman, probably deserves a mention. I believe he had 2 or 3 catches. We've been reading good things about him in training camp. I think he's got a very real shot of making the roster. So he's another guy I'd like to mention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a few guys that probably played didn't have a lot of snaps, but probably played well in their snaps. I saw a couple of the routes from Trey Tucker.
Yeah.
And I thought he played. I mean, obviously he's only played a limited amount of snaps, had one catch, but I think that they're showing you that they believe in Trey Tucker, and they're going to give him an opportunity to show what he can do this year. And he may end up being. I know Gino compared him to Santana Moss, and I'm not going to speak that highly of him, especially a guy who's a U fan back there. I know that it's hard for you to compare him to Santana Moss, but hey, look, if he's 50% of Santana Moss, then you got yourself a hell of a player.
Yeah, I love that comparison. Yeah. And I also, now I'm thinking about it, the 2 rookie defensive linemen we drafted, I saw some of the film guys. I think Ted Nguyen had a couple breakdowns. They had some good reps too, Hemingway and Pegues.
Yeah, and let's not forget Booker. He did a good job. Like I said earlier, when we talk about in the trade, he had some reps where he really showed his athleticism, showed his pass rush. And although some people in Raider Nation have claimed him as a run stuffer before he's even played it down, or they've really watched him. Me watching him, I'll tell you right now, there's nothing about a run stuffer to me. I see a guy who can get in the backfield, a guy who can cause some havoc, and I'm hoping he gets that opportunity to show Raider Nation what he could really do after being buried so long on that stacked Philadelphia defensive line. So I know you hate this part because you're an optimistic guy. Were there any losers for you that really stood out for you that really you were disappointed in how they played?
Not really. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of players that played poorly. I mean, a lot of it was ugly. I can't pinpoint any individuals, and I don't even want to go down that road anyways. Let me mention on a positive note, because I forgot earlier, my boy Pau Mao with a beautiful interception, the exact type of play I'm talking about that I think he's going to give us this season that we haven't had consistently in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Isaiah's going to be a playmaker back there. He just, like I said, get a little bit more experience, be able to read those plays a little quicker, and I think he's going to be put in position to be able to make plays. I know you don't want to be the negative Nancy, but I'll do it a little bit. AOC was obviously not his best. I don't think Raider Nation is time to throw in the towel on the guy. Let's give him an opportunity. They were throwing a lot of different things on him. That Seattle was defensively. They may not have been playing with their starters, but that doesn't mean they weren't using an aggressive scheme. And, it's a new system for AOC. So the checks, the audibles, things like that may not be as smooth for him at this time and may have played a role in him not playing well. Obviously, he underthrew some through that throw to Dante Thornton, who had his man beat by about 5 yards. And that was the only thing that cornerback would hope for is for an underthrow. Otherwise, he was going to be on the back of a poster, Dante Thornton's first touchdown. But also, I thought the offensive line, there were some struggles there, especially with our rookies, Charles Grant, things like that. But again, it's nothing to get concerned about. It's just a guy who's in his first game trying to learn. And, I have a complete confidence that the guy is going to improve, as well as all these guys are going to learn from their mistakes, and they're going to be integral parts of our team. And, so don't panic, Raider Nation. It's okay to have a couple guys not play well in preseason game number 1. Okay. Couple of, we move out of segment 1, out of first down. We want to talk about Thursday. We got a scrimmage with the 49ers. What are you thinking about that, Rocco?
That's exciting. I think those joint practices are really, first of all, very beneficial. Those will be, the ones versus, maybe the ones versus the ones, probably the ones, or at least the ones versus the twos. This is, to me, a closer simulation to a real game than what you see in the preseason. So I think it's super beneficial, and I can't wait to see how it goes. I can't wait to read all about it because to me, this is closer to a true competition.
Yeah, I think you said it right. I think you can't get enough of these joint practices, in my opinion. If I was a head coach, I'd probably book as many joint practices as I could and use those more to evaluate my starters and things like that, and maybe use the games to evaluate those guys who are roster bubble guys. But I thought it was pretty interesting that Pete Carroll already came out and said, look, his starters are going to play more in this game than they did in the last game, after they're going to have this joint practice already with the 49ers.
Yeah, he did say that. Let's wait and see what that actually looks like. What is that more? The offense, the first team offense played one series, now they play two series? Or does that mean the offense plays the first half? I don't know. We'll see. I don't have a strong philosophy one way or the other. I mean, whatever Pete Carroll thinks is best. I would probably always err. I'm playing my starters as little as possible, but I understand there is some benefit to it as well. So, whatever he decides, I'm good with it either way.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. There's got to be a balance. I don't think they should be playing 50 snaps in the game, but I think, giving them 15 to 20 snaps is not the end of the world. I mean, you can get hurt, as we've seen many people, whether it's Rashawn Slater or anybody else in this league, getting hurt in practice. It's just as easily as you can get hurt in these preseason games. Obviously, it sucks because, the preseason games don't matter. But, I don't think you can base your team on fear of injury. You got to do what's best to prepare yourself to play. And we have a game, we have a game coming up soon, so these guys got to be ready to go. So I'm excited to see what happens. Me personally, I hope they do play, because, look, at the core of everything we do, we're fans, and I want to see football. So I want to see those guys out there. I want to see Brock Bowers get a touch. I want to see Michael Mayer make a play. Those kind of things is entertaining. That's what this is. It's supposed to be a fun game, and I want to see our guys go out there and have some fun. The last thing I want to talk about in first down is our guy, your boy, Johnny G, fighting against the NFL, just like Al Davis, and he had some big news coming up where he won, and they will not have arbitration. His case will be heard in the courts, and that's a big win for John Gruden. What do you think about that?
I'm super happy for him, super fired up. I think it's awful what happened to him, the way it happened. And I would love if this goes down that path. I think the NFL is trying to fight this still. I think they appealed today, but we'll see if Gruden does get this into an actual court case, and we actually get some real information on how this went down. I think it'll be fascinating, and I think it'll be, real justice for John Gruden, what happened to him.
Yeah, the interesting thing to me is that his lawyer actually came out and said, and I know it's the lawyer speak and things like that, but he said, look, if this case gets to go to trial, then Roger Goodell is going to end up getting fired.
Wow.
And that's a pretty bold statement out there. So they must feel like they have some evidence out there to hang him out to dry. I actually thought it was interesting when you hear the details of this, is that there were actually going to be an arbitration where Roger Goodell was one of the arbitrators. I mean, that's crazy.
Sorry. Yeah, it is. Crazy.
How does that even make sense?
It doesn't. And hopefully it doesn't go down that road. Yeah, they appealed today, so hopefully, that appeal doesn't win. And, this thing goes to some kind of trial, and when we find out what happened, I mean, whatever you think about what Gruden said in those emails, and I'm not even going to touch any of that, those were don't even get me started. The way the whole thing went down was completely unfair to John Gruden. It was disgusting.
Yeah, look, no one's going to excuse the things that were said in that email or accept them. However, I think we all can agree, if we're held to things that we say in private conversations and things that we said 10 years ago, then we might find some embarrassing things that we probably may not believe today. So we wish Johnny G, he's a Raider for life. Wish him the best, and in true Raider fashion, us against the world, take down the NFL, John.
Absolutely.
Make it burn it all down, John. Burn it all down.
I want to see him get another job too, whether it's offensive coordinator, college job, whatever the case may be. I would love to see him get another job.
Absolutely. All right, so that's first down for you, Raider Nation. We're going to move on to second down. Second down, we're going to talk about the O-line. Is it about to be a feast or famine? Do you have concerns, or it's going to be a strength? What do you think, Rocco?
I think it's going to be a strength. I think it's talented. I think it's a lot of young talent that players that are ascending with potential. I think there's actually pretty good depth, all things considered. Offensive line is maybe the most difficult unit around the league to stockpile depth. I thought their issue last year was they were really poorly coordinated, poorly coached. They looked very confused more than anything. I thought they improved quite a bit once Scott Turner and Joe Philbin took over. I think with Chip Kelly and Brandon Carroll, I think they'll be coached up much better, and I think they're talented. Colton Miller is a rock at left tackle, and I think Parham, is a nice player with more upside. I like Meredith at center. Carroll explained why they like him at that position, and that makes sense to me. And I think even more so, I feel like they just think he's one of the 5 best guys, and he needs to be on the field. And I kind of felt that way as well. I think we have a good competition at right guard. I would think JPJ will probably win that job, but he's in a heated competition. And then, I thought Glaze showed a lot of promise. I mean, he needs to get better, but to me, he's like one of those guys, you drafted him, he's talented. He has a nice rookie year, but then there's speculation, maybe, we'll use that first round pick on a right tackle, or you bring somebody else in. I understand that, but to me, if you drafted the guy, you believed in his talent, and then he has a positive rookie year, I'd rather just develop him, give him the opportunity. Let's see how far he can take it. So I think it's a strong starting 5 with some good depth, especially on the inside. I think there'll be a strength, and if there are strength with Gino behind center and the weapons we have, we could have a very good offense.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, the offensive line. I don't know if I'm as far to say strength yet. I think it's TBD, but we'll talk about the individual members of this offensive line in a minute. But you said it right. The line improved with coaching last year. It was a young line and improved as you got better coaches. They ended up being rated the 19th best offensive line last year. And I don't know what their rating was before when Luke Getsy was the offensive coordinator, but I could promise you it's probably closer to 32 than it was to 19.
Yes.
And I think that they gave up 50 sacks last year, and in the last 8 games they only gave up about 15 or 16. So 30 of those sacks were in the first 8 or 9 games. And so, and a lot of that, obviously, it's on the players as well, but scheme has a huge role in how much time a quarterback gets. So I think that the change in scheme, the change in the way they coach those guys, and the emergence of Jordan Meredith in that second half of that season, I think played a huge role in that being a completely different offensive line at the end of the season as they were in the beginning of the season. So let's talk a couple of those individual linemen. Let's start with Colton Miller. Colton Miller, I'll let you start him off, Rocco, because I know you have a connection with Colton Miller as he's the longest tenured Raider with this team.
I love that, and I love that it's going to continue with the extension. He's looking like a Raider for life, which I absolutely love. He's another one. He actually, for the first time in his career, maybe since he was a rookie, he actually was really struggling early in the year. But he was coming off an injury, and he just wasn't himself yet. And then once we got 5, 6, 7 games into the season, especially the second half of this season, he was the same old Colton Miller, super reliable, rock solid left tackle.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. Because he was coming back from that injury, missed all of training camp, and he kind of got thrown into the fire, he struggled early. And I think most of the Raider Nation, that's the Colton Miller that they remember from 2024. But he actually, via PFF, had one of his strongest years with an 80.6 overall grade. And here's an interesting thing about Colton Miller. Interesting stat that I did not know until I did a little research. Colton Miller had over the last 4 years, has had an 87.1 pass blocking grade, which is the third best in the whole entire NFL over the last 4 years.
Wow.
So when you come to protecting the quarterback, there's very few guys that have been better than he's been over the last 4 years. And so it's obvious to why they wanted to re-sign him and keep him as a Raider, because the guy has just been a stalwart when it comes to protecting the quarterback. Obviously, there's a position he can improve a little bit when it comes to run blocking, but the guy has just been a stud. And, I'll raise my hand because I was the guy that was booing, that was angry when John Gruden decided to pull the trigger on him instead of Derwin James or instead of Tremaine Edmonds, like we said earlier. But I was wrong. John, you were right. I apologize, brother, because Colton Miller is a stud. He's probably one of the most underrated offensive linemen that has been in the league. And the only reason he hasn't been to multiple Pro Bowls is because we've had futility as an organization and haven't won enough games.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Yeah. I mean, to have such a reliable, dependable piece all these years, and with the extension years to come at that left tackle position, he's just so valuable.
Absolutely. All right. Let's move on to Dylan Parham, the left guard. Tell me what your thoughts.
I think he's a nice player. You have his grade up there. I think we've moved him around a little bit. I think, left guard is going to be his home now. And I think, he's still an ascending player. I think he's been a nice, solid guard for us, but he's got more upside that he could reach. And I'm banking on him reaching that this season.
Yeah, this was actually, last year was his best year. As a rookie, he made the all-rookie team. We know that. PFF had him at about 60.4 as a sophomore. And last year, 74.3 overall grade, his best grade. And technically, before he got hurt in week 7, he was performing as a top 6 guard in the league based on overall grade by PFF. So they really thought highly of him last year, especially when it comes to the run game. When it came to the run game, he had a 75.6 overall grade, was a top 15 run blocking guard. And so he's on the upward trend, and he's going into a contract year. So we'll see how he plays this year. Hopefully he can stay healthy, and if him and Colton Miller together can put together some magic on that left side, then maybe a guy like Ashton Jeanty can really put together a great season.
I believe Parham's put on weight too, a good weight, from what I understand. I think he came into camp heavier and stronger. Yeah, he's got another level he could reach, and I'm banking on him reaching it this year.
Now, I agree. All right, the next guy, let's talk about another. We say that Rocco has his favorites that he likes to root on. Well, this guy is a guy that he's been singing from the mountaintops since last year, and that's Jordan Meredith. And so why don't I talk about him?
No, it's just the thing with him. It's been the last 2-3 years. Every time he comes in, he does a good job. The second, third, fourth, fifth time this happens, it's becoming a trend. He always comes in and does a really good job, and I've been saying that. I really want you to take this more than me, because I've been asking for his PFF grade for 5 podcasts now. You're the PFF. I know he's one of the highest ranked guards last year, right?
Yeah, he was the 10th rated guard in the entire NFL with an 80.8 grade. And this is over 574 snaps. So it's not like he played a small sample size. 574 snaps is more than half the season. So he's put it together. He's finally figured out his spot. Even in both areas, he was probably equally as good. He had a 78.4 grade when it came to run blocking, which is about 14th best guard. And he had a 75.7 in pass blocking, which was the 16th best guard. So he was pretty well-rounded last year. It wasn't like he really struggled in one area and was really strong in the other. He was pretty solid across the board. And now I think with the move to center, it may fit him a little better, because one of the biggest things that Warren Sharp said about Jordan Meredith is that he's a really try-hard guy, but he's not the strongest guy. So the move to center might really make it easier on him, because he doesn't have to be that road grader as a guard to create lanes and things like that. And he might be able to just find a fit for him. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what this looks like. I don't want to say that he's won the job, because with Pete Carroll, it seems like there's a lot of competition always. But the way this trending, it looks like he's won that center job. And I think that might be a good decision for him.
Yeah, I'm excited because, as you said, I've always had my eye on him. I've always liked him. And like going into camp, coming off of the mini camps and everything over the summer, it looked like, and obviously you got the whole camp to compete, but it looked like he might be penciled in as a backup. And I like how this is kind of played out. I believe, there's probably a few different reasons to move JPJ to right guard and Meredith at center. I think you made a good point with the size and strength aspect. But like, I guess I'm kind of repeating myself, but like I said earlier, to me, Meredith is just one of your 5 best linemen, and you have to find a way to get him on the field.
Yep. And since you mentioned JPP, why don't you JPJ? Since you mentioned JPJ, why don't you calm Raiders Nation down with the fact that he is seemingly not going to be the starting center?
I don't even know what to say, Marquise. I don't know. It's a coach's decision. Pete Carroll kind of explained it. I think you kind of touched on the same thing. I think it's a size thing, a size strength thing. I think they think JPJ is a little stronger, maybe a little more physical, a little nastier. It suits the guard position better. Maybe there's some reports. Maybe they. I don't want to knock JPJ, but maybe they like Meredith, making some of the protection calls and those type of things at the line of scrimmage better than JPJ. And this is their idea to put the 5 best linemen on the field at their best positions. And he's in a competition with Alex Kappa. I don't even understand what the outrage is about. I think he's in a good competition with Kappa. I like JPJ just as much as anyone. I think he'll probably win that competition. And I think going through a heated competitive training camp will just make him that much better.
RELAX. Raider Nation, relax.
Aaron Rodgers? Yeah.
Aaron. I'll make an Aaron Rodgers quote because he's right. Relax. JPJ, listen, if he wins the job, great. If he doesn't win the job, then our depth, then that must mean that Alex Kappa is playing really well and our depth is really going to be that good. But obviously, we're all rooting for him because of his personality. He was a high draft pick. We have capital invested in him. I get it. But you are not at practice every day. We are not at practice every day. We don't have the skills or the intel to evaluate the individual play of a guard. But you know who does? Pete Carroll, the guys who are making the decision. And right now, either both are playing terrific in Alex Kappa or JPJ, or JPJ is not meeting the expectation of Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly and Brennan Carroll, the offensive line coach, and John Spytek, and anybody else who's making decisions, who see him every day, who you claim, Raider Nation, that we have trust in. So look, relax. Let him play it out. Let him compete. He wouldn't be the first person to compete for a job, and he wouldn't be the last person to compete for a job. And to allude to what you were saying, Rocco, about him losing the center, seemingly losing the center position. Vinny Bonsignore made a report that said, look, they didn't feel comfortable with him making calls on the line. Clearly, when he was the center, Alex Kappa was the right guard making the line calls. When he's the guard, Jordan Meredith's making the calls as the center. So it's not like they don't want the center to make the calls. It's that they don't seemingly want JPJ to make the calls. So maybe that's him learning a new system. Maybe that's an indication that, he doesn't understand enough about protections. In either case, he's going to be competing right now, it looks like, at right guard with Alex Kappa. And if he wins the job, good for him. If he doesn't win the job, then he can learn. He's a young player. And if he's forever a guard, well, rest easy, Raider Nation, because guards get paid more than centers. Good for JPJ. All right. Since we're talking about his guards in competition, let's move on to Alex Kappa. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what are your thoughts on when he signed Kappa, what you've seen from him so far?
Yeah, just what everyone else knows. He's had a very good career. Was considered one of the better guards in the league for a long time. Coming off a really bad season, that entire line was bad. Maybe he was a victim of what was going on around him a little bit. Maybe it was just an off year. Obviously, Spytek knows him well from Tampa, and whatever he saw on film last year, he was comfortable enough bringing him in and letting him compete for a starting job. So, if he could roll back the clock and play like the Alex Kappa of old, he was a Pro Bowl type of guard, or maybe he's somewhere in the middle, but still a very serviceable guard. We'll see. Obviously he's doing good enough that he's in a neck and neck competition with JPJ. So let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, you alluded to it. Last year in 23, he didn't have the best year, as you can see from the graphic up there right now. But in 23, he had a 67.6 PFF overall grade, and in 22 he had a 64.9 overall grade, which were both considered to be solid starter grades. So he really fell off a cliff last year, and whether that's some injury, whether it's something personal, I'm not sure, but he's getting an opportunity to rectify that and compete. And I feel like Pete Carroll and John Spytek have built a team with a lot of guys like that who have had success in this league, who maybe fallen off for whatever reason, whether it's injury, whether it's age, whether it's just a bad opportunity, bad situation. And they're getting an opportunity now to compete, and they're getting an opportunity to show that, hey, they still have something left in the tank. And Alex Kappa is no different from them. And look, if he wins that right guard spot, it's going to be because he earned it. And if you had to work hard to get it, then I'm sure he'll work hard to keep it and protect Geno Smith and create lanes for Ashton Genty as best as he can. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of that competition. And Alex Kappa, if worst case scenario, if he's your backup, then that gives you pretty good depth at that interior offensive line spot.
Well said.
And the last guy I really want to highlight is DJ Glaze. They are seemingly starting right tackle. I'll let you take the reins on this one.
I kind of mentioned him before. Talented kid. Had a nice rookie year. Especially considering we weren't planning on starting him. He kind of got thrown out there because of injury, or maybe a little injury, a little bit of performance ahead of him. But he came in and did a very admirable job. I think he's got a lot of upside, and I like that we're giving him this opportunity. We kind of use that phrase sometimes. He's a guy I didn't want to recruit over. I want to give him this year to see how good of a player he can become, and I believe in him. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he was good as a rookie. He wasn't terrific, but for a third-round rookie to come out of nowhere and play as many snaps he played almost 1,000 snaps, was pretty good in pass blocking. It was 66.1 overall, and which was his overall grade as well. And he was serviceable in the run game with a 61.9 in run blocking. Where he only gave up 3 sacks the entire season. But where he really struggled, I think, a little bit was with some of the penalties. He had 8 penalties. So that's the area where I think where he takes the leap. Just making sure that he improves a little bit with those penalties and some of the holding penalties and the pre-snap penalties, and then continues to improve. I mean, he was rated the 50th best tackle in the league. Okay, so 50th out of I think 140. So he was in the top third of the tackles in the league as a rookie, third-round rookie, who was not expected to play. So I think with a better system, with more experience, with a better quarterback play, I think that all these things that will help him improve. And not to mention, having a guy that could be JPJ or Alex Kappa next to him would help as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing his progression, because we have a very young line, and if we got it right, then we can have a really good line for a long time.
Yeah, one other thing with Glaze, not only did he have a nice rookie year, in my opinion, not only was it a nice rookie year, but that's one of the hardest positions in the league to play as a rookie. There are very good tackles who had miserable rookie years. I think Colton Miller is a case in point. If I remember correctly, I think he struggled badly as a rookie.
Him and Brandon Parker were a disaster.
So for me, it's one thing to have a good rookie year, and you're like, oh, this guy's got a lot of upside, which he does, but maybe tenfold at that position.
Yeah, I agree. And, obviously we just highlighted the top 6 offensive linemen, but, you have other guys on that line who are probably going to make that team. And Rogers, the third-round rookie, Caleb Rogers at the guard. You would believe that Thayer Munford probably will make that team, as well as probably your third tackle, and then Charles Grant, the rookie third-round pick, as the other tackle. So I would expect you to have 9 guys make that team. And the other ones, the rookies, obviously, we'll see where they're at. They didn't look terrific in the preseason game, but as we mentioned earlier, it's the first preseason game, their first game of their life at the professional level. So let's give them a little bit of grace and opportunity. And Thayer Munford, he's proven over the last 3 years that he is a valuable piece that can be helpful in a pinch. And maybe he gets a better opportunity. Maybe he takes a little bit more advantage of it this year. But at worst case scenario, he's your swing tackle, and you can do a lot worse than Thayer Munford.
Well said. I was going to say the exact same thing. For your swing tackle, you could do a lot worse. There's not too many teams around the league that are doing jumping jacks about their 3 tackles. That's just the reality. Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So that takes us to third down. Rocco's thoughts. So Rocco, why don't you let us know what we got planned for the day?
You know what? Let me put you always have me up past my bedtime. It's getting dark in here. Okay. So Rocco's thoughts. I just was going to mention, I just really believe Pete Carroll is living up to his mantra of always competing, right? In all aspects, but I'm especially referencing how he's managing these positional battles and all these competitions for different roles on the team. I never remember a Raiders training camp where there were so many different guys getting so many different opportunities, with the 1s, with the 2s, competing for different roles. I think all coaches, preach about competition, but I think with a lot of coaches, it's a little bit of coach speak. I think in the past, in different Raiders training camps, there would be maybe 1 or 2, 3 positional battles, but every day you get the practice reports and it's the same first team rolled out. It's the same second team rolled out. With Pete Carroll, it's, we talked about all the competition on the line, go to the defensive line. The 2 rookies have gotten, first team reps. At linebacker, you have Pratt and White, and Jamal Adams is getting first team reps, and Tommy Eichenberg was getting first team reps. You have a competition at outside corner between Porter and Richardson, and now Kaibu Kelly got first team reps today and had an interception. Greedy Vance has gotten for, I could go on and on. I've never seen so many guys get such a real opportunity to make a statement and make a claim for a job. And to me, I think we go into a training camp and we read everything we read, and we look at the roster, and we think we know who gives us the best chance. And I think that even the coaches think they know who gives them the best chance to win at different positions. But you never really know until you give these players a chance to compete, to earn it. And I think it's a great philosophy to identify the best players at the best position that gives us the best chance to win. And I think it brings out the best in each individual player. I think it creates depth. I think it's great for building the culture in the locker room. And I think Pete Carroll's really walking his talk. He's really committed to competition more so than any Raiders coach I've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, a lot of people say that that everyone has an opportunity, and some coaches mean it. And clearly, Pete Carroll means what he says. And to the dismay of many of Raider Nation, because people say that they like to have people compete, but as soon as it's a guy that you really like competing for their job, like JPJ, next thing you know, people don't like competition so much. So it is to Pete Carroll, hats off to him. It's probably very easy for coaches to buckle to the pressure of the fans, the ownership, to say, hey, this guy gets paid X amount of dollars, he needs to be on the field. And it's another thing to say, no, he's not the best player for this team, he's going to sit. So give everybody an opportunity. That's going to attract free agents. It's going to attract guys who just want an opportunity, because if you say, hey, you can go to Team X or you can go to Raiders with Pete Carroll, they're going to say, hey, well, I'm really going to have an opportunity here, because when he says you can compete, he really means it. So I think that's good for Raider Nation. It's good for our team. And to a point that you said earlier, the team we start the season with is not the team that you're going to end up playing with. And so all these guys who are getting opportunities now to compete, it's going to help this team later down the line when they have to be on the field to play, because player X is injured, or this player has been cut or out for the season, whatever the case may be, because we all know this is a marathon. So these guys are getting valuable experience now because they're going to need them, and that competition is going to make our team better down the stretch.
Great point.
All right, and that leads us, ladies and gentlemen, to fourth down. And so fourth down, that's your questions. Again, you bring the heat, guys, and we're going to bring these answers. So let's start this thing off. So first off, we have a question. Says here, can the Raiders defense get to the quarterback more effectively in 2025, and how will they generate pressure consistently?
100% yes. First thing, really, I was going to say first thing, Malcolm, because first thing, a healthy Max Crosby. Max Crosby is one of the best edge defenders in the league. We all know this, one of the best defense players in the league. He wasn't himself last year. He was still pretty damn good, but he wasn't the game wrecker that he is usually. He's back 100% healthy with a new contract. He's going to be back better than ever. And pair him with a healthy Malcolm Koonce. Malcolm Koonce didn't play it down last year. You saw what that pairing did the second half of the season in 2023 when we were playing, really good defense. And to me, it started with those two. Throw in Adam Butler, Tyree Wilson, and whoever else steps up. I think we're going to have a formidable pass rush.
Yeah, I think health, it all comes down, like you said, to health. I think if you're healthy, Max Crosby and Adam Butler, Malcolm Koonce, and the emergence of Tyree Wilson, those guys are going to get after the quarterback. I think a guy we didn't mention that if he's healthy, again, the caveat, if he's healthy, Jamal Adams had almost 10 sacks under Pete Carroll's in his defense. So that's another guy who's going to be flying up there if he's healthy, trying to get sacks. So you're going to have a lot of guys trying to eat and trying to get after that quarterback. Hopefully we have a job to stop the run, to get us into third and long situations. I think that is going to be the bigger question for me. Can we stop the run well enough to create the pass rush opportunities for us consistently? And if we do, then I think those guys are just, proofs in the pudding. Those guys are going to get after the quarterback. They've done it their whole career. So I think that they'll get, if just given the opportunities, they'll get it done.
That's a great point with the run defense. It's, it's that old cliche. You have to earn the right to rush the passer. You got to give yourself those opportunities to get the offense in third and long. Jamal Adams is also a great point, and I'll give you another name, Devin White. Devin White's always been at his best blitzing, rushing the quarterback. So he's another guy. It'll be interesting to see the scheme. I'm not, in all honesty, not quite sure what to expect with Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham blending their ideas together. It'll be interesting to see how much we do blitz and what that looks like. I can't wait to see.
Yes, sir. Next question from Raider Mike in Baltimore. It says here, Raider Mike in Baltimore says, who will emerge as the leader in the defensive secondary in 2025?
I gotta say Palmar, right? I have to. He's my guy. Palmar, Jeremy Chin.
You can't pick the entire secondary here, Rocco.
Well, I'll just mention those two. I don't know what we're, a leader. Are we talking about a vocal leader? I don't know. I think Palmar, he's going to be your free safety, so he's going to be kind of that leader on the field. He's going to be kind of in charge to make sure everyone's aligned correctly and those type of things. And I think he's going to play well, and as he does, I think he'll continue to emerge as that leader. So I'll go with Palmar.
I'm going to go with Eric Stokes.
Okay.
I've been hearing a lot of good things about Eric Stokes out there in the training camp. I think that, he's a talented guy. He's he's got first round talent. He's got the size and length that would like. And I think if he's healthy, again, another caveat, another guy that if he's healthy, he's going to have an opportunity to really shine and take that leap to be one of the better cornerbacks in the league. So I'll go Eric Stokes on that one. All right. Next.
The other thing, too, besides, leader, we're talking about individual players. Very good secondary coach with Marcus Robinson. Joe Woods also is the passing game coordinator. And also, of course, and I've said this ad nauseum, Pete Carroll's specialty is coaching defensive backs. So Those are your real leaders.
Yeah, great point. All right, this one's all the way out from Philly, Rocco. We got the most known unknown here. Says here that if the Raiders use Jeremy Chin in the big nickel role, how will they address any weaknesses at safety depth in 2025?
Well, I think they kind of just did with the signing of Edmonds, and keep in mind they expect Lonnie Johnson back. You never know how these injuries play. I think Carroll threw out maybe week 4, week 5. Maybe it's week 8. Who knows? But it's not a season-ending injury. You just signed Edmonds. I don't know that they have depth concerns. I like Chris Smith at Georgia. I would love to hear something about Trey Taylor getting an opportunity. I really liked him coming out of the draft. That hasn't seemed to be the case yet. But, we also have Thomas Harper, who's played well at times. I don't see depth as a weakness.
I'm curious because I don't know if he's playing the big nickel out of they think he's just that good, that talented, or if they have concerns about our nickel back. And if he does play that big nickel, how that affects the safety. But I think you said it right. I think right now you would have to believe, just based on the experience, that a guy like Terrell Edmonds will have an opportunity to be that third safety. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out with him at the big nickel. I think it's good to have the ability to move him around. I think guys like him and Jamal Adams having multiple jokers on the field, multiple guys who are positionless, makes it harder for the offense to read what we're in or how we're going to play. But overall, that it puts a little extra stress on other guys and on your depth. It tests your depth and how well these guys can play. And that's part of the problem with the injury of Lonnie Johnson. It seemed like they really found a role for Lonnie Johnson that they were comfortable with. So hopefully he's able to come back and quickly in the season more towards the first half of the season as opposed to the latter half. And if not, then hopefully guys like Terrell Edmonds and the guys you named, Chris Smith or Trey Taylor or
Thomas Harper.
Or Thomas Harper can step up and take that nickel role. All right, fourth question here, all the way from Honolulu. We have Raider Hawaii. It says here, who will be the starting cornerbacks in week 1?
Eric Stokes and Darian Porter.
Seems to be trending that way, right? It's interesting that a guy who just made the transition from wide receiver to the corner, third round pick, is going to be starting right away. But, from what I've seen, man, he's playing pretty well. I've seen multiple clips of him on one-on-ones, which is a drill that's designed for the offense, really. And him come up with interceptions on multiple routes on one-on-one. So maybe he's figuring out, maybe they just know how to use him. Maybe, like you said, the Pete Carroll tutelage and the good coaching is putting him in situations to be successful. But, I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Me too. Yeah. Huge upside. Freak athlete.
Yes. And our last question of the day is from the First Lady herself, Raider Selena. And her question says here, which player is the biggest X factor in the Raiders 2025?
Wow, that's a good question. My mind immediately jumps to Kuntz. I'm sure there's a few others. I'm sure you'll have a good one. I'm going to say Kuntz. If Kuntz picks up where he left off in 2023, which we all expect, and even maybe I fully expect him to even improve from that level, and he becomes a force rushing the passer across from Crosby doing his thing, to me, that's the biggest X factor. That could make a big difference in wins and losses.
All right, and I mean, the easy answer is Geno Smith, right? He's a quarterback. He's going to have the biggest impact on the game. He's the biggest X factor. So if I can't take the easy answer, then I'm going to go, oh, man. That's tough, man. I'm going to go
Gordon.
I'm stumped over here, man. There's so many answers, but I guess I'm going to go Brock Bowers. You know what? Actually, I'm going to go Ashton Genty. Is Ashton Genty just good, or is he transcendent? Is he the guy that, there's some running backs you can go out there and you look at their stats at the end of the season, they got 1,300 yards, and you're like, man, he was really good. Then you have those other guys who have 15, 16, 1,700 yards, and you're like, man, that guy carried the team. And so is Ashton Genty going to be that guy who carries the Raiders to victory, or is he just going to be another guy that racks up stats? So he's going to be my X factor.
I like that one.
All right, Raider Nation. Well, that's a wrap for this week of Silver and BlackCast, where the takes are tough and the loyalty is lifelong. Just remember, guys, win, lose, or tie, it is Raider Nation till we die. Don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button, guys, because we really love your support and want to continue to grow this channel. So we'll be back soon with more fire, more passion, and more reasons to believe in the Shield. So until then, stay bold, stay loud, and stay committed to excellence. Just win, baby.
Just win, baby.